Hi, I'm O.C. Farrell. I'm a professor at the University of New Mexico and coordinator of the Business Ethics Certificate Program.
My name is Barney Rosenberg. I'm the Vice President of Ethics and Business Conduct at the Meggitt Group. We're in the aerospace and defense industry.
Linda Farrell, Professor of Marketing. I'm working with OC on the Business Ethics Certificate course.
We were talking with Barney a few minutes ago about what students need to learn about ethics. And we think we'll just focus on this segment dealing with international issues. Many people believe that ethics changes from country to country and culture to culture, and we do know that there are tremendous differences in cultures and values. But when you're running a multinational company, such as Barney's involved with, it creates many challenges. But I think you were telling us that when you're working for your company, everyone needs to kind of embrace the values of the organization. Is that right?
It is, and one of the areas where that really becomes very apparent is in the leadership of the company. It's easy to find in an organization the solid lines on a organizational chart. Who's the boss? And pretty easy to identify who she might be in a particular department. We've found in our organization that there are informal lines of ethical leadership. And an example would be one of our factories has a population of Filipino immigrants who are working side by side with everybody else. And when issues arise, having to do with the interpretation of a particular manufacturing drawing or anything else that's going on among the people that work on the factory floor, they turn to one of the leaders of their community who's not going to appear on an org chart anywhere. He's somebody who's respected throughout their community for his experience, for his judgment, and for his leadership, informal leadership. And we as a larger company, when we are able to identify those folks and respect their role in addressing the leadership issues and the ethical issues, we're going to be better off, and so will all the folks that work in the company.
Very interesting, because many people again think that there'll be a silo in the organization and they'll be confronted with ethical issues and they'll be able to make ethical decisions on their own. But what you're saying is, even subcultures within an organization may have an informal ethical leadership structure. So I guess there's a lot of work you have to do to make sure every employee understands that they have a responsibility in ethical leadership.
Our view is that there is no chain of command when it comes to ethical decision making, and we encourage people to raise issues, bring them forward to somebody. Don't internalize it, don't lose sleep over it. Get it out on the table and let's resolve it. I'm fond of saying, when people often come to me and say, Barney, I have good news and bad news. I said, well, give me the bad news first and we'll celebrate our successes later. Let's deal with the issues that we've got in front of us.
Very good.
Another resource that you can use in this area too, thinking about this, is, and some of you may be familiar with that, Transparency International has a country corruption index, and you can look and find out what the perceptions are. They actually have a heat map, what looks at most corrupt to least corrupt based on color, and you can scroll over it. It's a very effective tool to open a conversation about global ethics, differences, how you deal with some specific examples.
And that's overall corruption, within that country. And sometimes people point out that, well, let's just say Vietnam. You have operations in Vietnam.
We do.
I understand that over 90% of all software and music is pirated there, and they have different values about systems.
Mm-hmm.
Your company goes in and it may have a different value system than some of the local employees. How do you deal with that?
That's where having a strong code and a commitment to doing things the right way helps a lot. There are values that are transmitted formally and informally, and we come across situations from time to time where we just make the decision that we're going to stick by our values. We're just not going to take that business opportunity. We'll let somebody else have that because it's in conflict with what we believe.
how does your ethics training change? The content's gotta be fairly similar from country to country. So is it basically language changes, or does some of the delivery format change based on the differences in the culture?
What I try to do is take any new training, for instance, that we've developed, and we're in this process right now, so it's a very timely question. And before we launch that training to the company as a whole, I'll send it off to people in the countries where we do business, in translation, so they get it in their local language. And I'll say, please look it over. Is there anything here that catches your eye that we need to fix that's wrong? The classic example, I guess, in marketing, which you would know better than I, Linda, is when Chevrolet years ago tried to promote their Chevy Nova in Spanish-speaking countries. Well, Nova means it doesn't go, Nova. So you run into a problem when that's a description of a car. We try to do the same with our ethics training, make sure we haven't offended anybody in the process or given the wrong impression.
Well, one final question before we wrap up here. Moving a little bit away from the global area, but you've taught business ethics in a university environment, also in several different countries, including Brazil. What advice would you give to someone teaching business ethics in terms of your knowledge of what really happens in a large multinational corporation? What students need to know, and what would be that common thread that you'd want the students to get out of a business ethics course, say before they come into your company?
I started my working life as a white-collar criminal defense lawyer. So I've seen the consequences of what happens when things go wrong. As a result, I've become a big believer that fear is a wonderful motivator for people doing business overseas. I like to give the example of it's hard enough to do business in your hometown. If you move to the neighboring town, it gets a little harder. Now move across state lines. You're all of a sudden faced with a whole different set of laws and regulations, different people administering whatever it is you're trying to do. Now take it to another country. Just exponentially harder to do business in those places. Be aware of it. Do not ever assume that going from your hometown to China is going to be the same thing.
Very good. Well, thanks for joining us today, Barney. It's been very informative.
Thank you.